Hello Space Cat, I'm Jules, an illustrator living on an island off the south coast of England. I spend my mornings in my cosy studio and the afternoons baking sourdough and hanging out with my furry friends. Of course, tea from a proper pot is essential, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, you grab a cup and I'll pour. Editing Jules popping in to say there is still time to get your Christmas card from me. The link is in the description below. Hello Space Cats, Jules here with a sleepy time tale to tell you as you watch me paint. This video will be soothing for you if you're finding it hard to sleep, or if you wake up in the middle of the night and need a warm, cosy hug and a story. Before we start, get yourself snuggled into your blankets and make a warm, cosy nest for yourself. And if your cat or dog is on your bed, give them a good night kiss and tell them that you love them and you'll see them in the morning. And if you have a person beside you, you can do that also, but it's not a requirement. Close down your tired eyes, or you can keep them half open to watch the video. Either way, the story will help you feel that now is the time for rest. Take a nice deep breath through your nose and slowly release it, letting the last few hours drain away. It might be nighttime, or you might be having an afternoon nap. Now is the time for some relaxation, so remind your body that this is what we're doing now. It's rest time. Take a little time to make sure that you are really comfortable. Let's join Mouse as he starts his day. Even before Mouse opened his eyes in the morning, he could hear the wind. It was buffeting the trees outside his house, and the leaves were falling from the branches and tapping his windows. Mouse lived at the bottom of the oldest, strongest oak in the woodland. His tree had seen many storms come and go over the years. It made him feel cosy just to think of it, so he pulled up his blankets tighter around him and snoozed for a bit longer. When he woke properly an hour later, the wind had dropped just a little. He stuck his long toes out of his bed and wiggled them as if to say hello to them, and then pulled on his warm slippers. Snuggling into his fluffiest robe, he stretched and yawned as he made his way into the kitchen for a hot cup of tea. The teapot was in the shape of an acorn, with the little acorn cap as the teapot lid. He watched the tea leaves swirl as he poured in the boiling water from his old copper kettle, replaced the lid and popped on the tea cosy. A few minutes later, he was sipping his tea and looking out of his kitchen window as a gust of wind blew more red, orange and yellow leaves off the trees nearby. He saw his friend Squirrel as she hopped down the beech tree to her stash of nuts. She dug one out and held it in her mouth as she eagerly rushed back up the trunk to her dray, up in the safety of a nest of branches. The first job of the day, he thought, is to get some logs in for the fire. He pulled on his work trousers and a warm sweater, his scarf and a raincoat, his thick welly boot socks and his winter boots, and he set off. Once the door was open, he could feel how strong the wind still was. He leant into it, glad he had so many warm layers on. The log shed was only 10 steps away. He soon filled his basket with logs and kindling to get the fire going later. It was such a sturdy log store. It kept the wood dry all year round, and was also a place for his insect friends to hibernate in. He was always careful to pick up the wood that had no one living on it. Back in the warm kitchen, Mouse turned on his oven. He twitched his whiskers. What shall I make today? He pondered. He looked at the ingredients in his cupboard, a perfect selection for one of the neighbourhood favourites, chocolate chip cookies. Once the sugar and butter were creamed together, the egg and flour were added, and finally the chocolate chips. Whilst they were baking in the oven, Mouse found some greaseproof paper and string. The wafting smell in the kitchen was making his tummy feel rather hungry. He tidied his kitchen, making sure there were no crumbs left on the worktop, and wiped the sink with a soft cloth until it was nice and shiny. Then he went through to his living room and arranged his crocheted blanket and cushions. And he laid some rolled up newspaper in the fire grate and placed upon it some kindling and sticks, ready to light when he'd finished his jobs. The oven timer pinged, ready to get the cookies out. Looking out of his kitchen window as they cooled on a wire rack, Mouse noticed the sky was beginning to clear and the slate grey clouds were disappearing over the horizon, being replaced with an autumn blue sky. Mouse carefully packaged up some cooled cookies into greaseproof paper. There were 4 packages in all, and 3 cookies left over for Mouse himself. He tied each gift with the garden twine he'd found and popped them in his basket. Badger, although very sleepy, was happy to receive such a kind gift, and as they chatted on the doorstep, suggested that Mouse could perhaps come for dinner one evening. Badger was not a morning kind of person, although it wasn't technically still morning. Next he stopped at Rabbit's hole. Rabbit was very pleased to see a friendly face, as the storm had worried her greatly, and the cookies made her feel even better. "You know," said Mouse, "if you are ever scared when a storm is coming, you can always come to my house and we can sit it out together," he said. What a kind thought. Rabbit bounced back into her den and was soon back with a little posy of flowers for Mouse. He knew that the red deer family would be around somewhere, but they are shy and like to keep themselves to themselves. Mouse knew on a day like today they would be deep in the woodland sheltering. So he left their cookies on their favourite tree stump, covered in a thick, sumptuous layer of moss. Finally, he called up to Squirrel, who was still in her dray at the top of the pine tree, keeping out of the breeze. When she heard that he had some cookies for her, she bounded down head first and happily accepted the little paper parcel. "Oh, Mouse, you are such a good friend," said Squirrel. "I shall return the favour and bring you some nut butter tomorrow." At last, back at home, Mouse was able to light the fire and sit with his blanket, a hot cup of tea, and his cookies. The flames crackled as they caught onto the logs. He picked up the book he was reading and flipped open the pages until he found where he'd left off. The evening was drawing in, and Mouse could see the stars beginning to light the sky through the window above his sofa. The warmth and coziness of his living room was making him feel quite sleepy. So he shut his eyes just for a moment and soon fell fast asleep. Good night, Mouse. Good night, Woodland.